Hi everyone! Today's palette review video is going to be on the Too Faced Hot Buttered Rum palette. This review will have my thoughts on all of the shadows as well as swatches and 5 different eye looks. Let's start off by talking about the packaging, which is really adorable. I really like these Too Faced mini palettes because they're so sleek and compact. They are made out of metal, which is fine. I prefer cardboard, but it is so compact, and that is something I especially like in palettes. So you are getting a metal case here. You open it up, and even though it's a small palette, you're actually getting 8 eyeshadows inside, which is really great. Amongst the 8 shadows, you are getting 2 different sizes of pans. The ones that are larger over here on the edge are 0.95 grams of product, and the other square-shaped pans are 0.8 grams of product. I think that's a little strange, personally, because I can't really figure out why they made these ones not as tall as the square pans. Like, visually speaking, I wish they had just made them like a little bit larger just to make them fall in line with those. I understand why they're larger, but it seems like a strange size in comparison to the square pans. You are getting a mirror here, which is fairly large given how small this palette actually is. There's not a lot of like white space around it, which is really great. Unfortunately, you are missing the names on the inside of the palette, which always drives me nuts. There is definitely space to put the names here, so I'm a little bit disappointed in that, but the names are written out on the back. This mini little palette will set you back 34 Canadian or 25 US, and they do say that it has a bit of a scent. I'm pretty sure they said it was like a hot buttered rum scent, which would make sense with the actual title of the palette, but I don't really know what hot buttered rum smells like. And to me, this just smells kind of sweet. Not overpowering, not sickening, just kind of sweet. But I don't know if it's actually hot buttered rum scented. This palette is limited edition, but it is still currently in stock at Sephora, which is where I last checked it. I don't know how long it will stay in stock, however. All right, now that we've talked a little bit about the packaging, let's take a look at the swatches on my arm so you can see exactly what these shadows look like.
You might be the one taking me home. One thing really lead to one. You say that you're the worst, but I don't know.
Okay, you've seen the swatches, so let's talk a little bit about the shadows in depth. Since this is an 8-pan palette, this is actually a lot smaller than what I'm used to dealing with in a review, and even putting together 5 different eye looks, I found I was challenged a little bit to create different looks just because I'm so restricted in terms of the number of shadows. But what I did discover is that I actually had a lot of fun putting these looks together. I felt like the overall color scheme of this is very cohesive, and it worked really well for every single look that I did. With this palette, you're getting a ton of mattes, which makes me really happy. There are 4 true mattes in here. The cream, the mid-tone brown, this sort of rusty shade here, as well as the mustard yellow. The darker brown up here actually has glitter specks in it, but they don't really adhere to the skin that well. They will basically just flake away when you put it on your eyes, so I kind of qualify that one as a matte shadow because that's how I used it. I always put it in sort of the outer corner of my eye. I have it there today. And it works well because the glitter really just doesn't stick around. As for shimmers, you are getting this icier white one up here. I hate having to look at the back to see the shadow names. That one's a whipped cream. Warm and Fuzzy is more of a champagne, which is really lovely on the lid. It's an easy go-to lid color. And then this more rustier one here is called Born to Rum. This one actually comes across very orange coppery on the skin, which is really lovely. I wasn't really expecting that initially when I looked at it. I thought it would just look like kind of a boring shimmery brown, but there's actually a lot of orange properties to it, which is very nice. In general, I do feel like the consistency of the formula of the shadows is pretty in line with some of Too Faced's best formulas. In years gone by, in some holiday palettes, they have had just not great quality. I mean, some of them have been perfectly fine, but some of them have been a little bit chalky, hard to use. I'm not really finding that with this palette. The mattes are really beautiful. I mean, I always feel like Too Faced makes really good mattes, and these ones are no exception. They're easy to blend out, the colors are good, the pigmentation is strong, so I'm very pleased with those. The shimmers kind of change a little bit depending on which one you're using. This one down here is very smooth, as is the more coppery toned one. I did find that whipped cream, the one up here, is a little bit more flaky. I never had to use it wet, so it's not that flaky, but I just found the consistency of it wasn't quite as smooth as the other shimmery shadows. That being said, I didn't find like the shadow was detrimental or anything like that, so I had no issues putting that on my lid. It just had a little bit of a different consistency that I wanted to mention. I know some people have pointed out that the quality of Too Faced palettes made in China is not necessarily the same as the US palettes. I don't always find that to be accurate, but I will say that this palette was, I think, it says bulk made in USA and then assembled in the Dominican Republic. So if you were concerned about a Too Faced palette being made in China because you don't like the consistency of it, don't be concerned about this palette because it is made in the USA predominantly. It may actually come as a surprise that I did pick up this palette from Too Faced just because I'm not generally drawn towards neutral palettes anymore. I feel like I've reached a point in my makeup collection where I basically have all of the neutrals and don't really need that many more because I do predominantly wear colorful eyeshadow, and this is not a palette that I would ever call colorful. However, there was something about the layout of this one in particular that really drew me in, and if I had to pinpoint it, I think it would just seriously come down to these two shadows down here. I found those to be very unique for something that Too Faced has put together. I don't ever tend to see a mustard yellow from them, and that shade is really, really quite beautiful. I've been drawn to a lot of yellow colors in recent months, and this is like the fall equivalent of a yellow shadow for me. I think it's really beautiful. This one here, what are you called? Cinnamon, was, I think I initially thought it was going to be more red, or at least it looked that way in press photos. And when I got it and started playing around with it, it's beautiful, but it's not quite as red as I had anticipated. But it is still a beautiful shade, and it does work really well with this palette. But it's funny, looking at this, I think it's these two that really drew me towards the whole kind of ensemble of shadows because those are the most beautiful to me. That being said, I did find myself quite enamored with every single shadow in here. And that makes me happy because for such a small compact palette, you don't really want any of these to be a true dud. But this brow bone highlight shade, it works for my skin tone. I do really like this sort of icy white thing that has a little bit of it's funny, in the viewfinder, it looks very cool toned, but to my eyes, I see more of like an eggshell cream colored finish to it. I even actually liked this cooler toned medium brown. I didn't really think that it was gonna work with this palette when I first looked at it because it just seemed so cool toned in comparison to everything else, but it really does help to balance out the entire palette, which is very nice. All right, now that we've discussed the shadows, let's take a look at the 5 eye looks that I created with this palette. The first look uses buttered rum through the crease. I think this is just an easy color to put through the crease, and it's so unique because it's that sort of dirty mustard yellow. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I used Warm and Fuzzy on the lid. What an easy, beautiful champagne color to use. Too Faced does make a lot of these kinds of colors, but they seem to make them flawlessly every single time. I then have Cinnamon on the outer corner of the eye and drag that a little bit through my crease, and then I use Vanilla Extract on the brow bone. For look number 2, I decided to go a little bit more cool toned, so I have Bottoms Up through the crease. That's that medium brown that has the cooler edge to it. I have Whipped Cream on the lid. I applied it dry here and it looks just fine. It was flakier in general than the rest of the shimmery colors, but it still looks beautiful. I then have Spiked on the outer corner of the eye and drag that slightly through my crease as well. And then of course I have Vanilla Extract on the brow bone just to highlight that area because that is my kind of perfect brow bone highlight shade. For look number 3, I decided to go more coppery. So I have Buttered Rum again through the crease. Still love it in that area. It's so beautiful. I have Born to Rum on the lid, and as I said before, it came out a lot more copper than I was expecting, and I really like that coppery orange look on that lid. I have Spiked on the outer corner of the eye, and then I put Warm and Fuzzy on the inner corner just to brighten it up a little bit. I also have Vanilla Extract on the brow bone. For look number 4, I decided to go all matte and very neutral just to show you that you can wear this as a very basic palette. So I have Bottoms Up through the crease, Vanilla Extract on the lid, and then Spiked on the outer corner of the eye and drag that through my crease as well. For my look today, I decided to switch it up a little bit because I wanted to make sure that cinnamon would actually work through my crease. So that's what I first applied to my crease. I applied it lightly at first and then built it up because I wanted to make sure that it would actually perform as a transition color, and it does. I think it looks great in this area. I then put buttered rum on the lid. I hadn't yet used this color on the lid and I really wanted to showcase it that way. I'd used it continuously as a crease color, but never on the lid. So buttered rum again is on the lid. I followed it up by putting spiked on the outer corner of the eye and dragged that slightly through my crease. I then have warm and fuzzy on the inner corner of my eye just to add a little bit of brightness to this look because it is so matte. And for my lower lash line, I then used spiked along the lower lash line as close as I could get it to my lashes, and then blended it out with cinnamon and sort of dragged that towards my upper crease area because I wanted this to be a blown out, very warm, cinnamony eye. This whole eye look screams very autumnal to me, and I just think it really showcases how versatile the Hot Buttered Rum palette can be. Alright, so to sum up my thoughts on the Hot Buttered Rum palette by Too Faced, I'm very happy with it. I am very content with this tiny 8-pan palette. I mean, this thing is just so small. I love that it fits in my hand, and yet there's enough shadow in here to make me perfectly happy. I mean, I wore this all of last week, and I was excited to use it. And that makes me very happy because I don't get that sensation very often from a neutral palette, but there is something very special about this one. So I am very happy that I picked it up. So that's gonna be it for my review on the Too Faced Hot Buttered Rum palette. I hope you found this video informative. Thank you so much for joining me today, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye.
You're my Peter, taking me home.